Hola, welcome. I'm invited to talk about IPMA Delta certification. And I think that's a very important one for organization to improve competitiveness. My own experience is since many years in various sectors. On the private, I'm working here for consultancy in Germany with automotive industry and right now with big mega projects in the German construction area. And it's very important for all the organizations that are involved to be professional. That means individual competence, organizational competence, as well as competence on the societal level. I've done my IPMA Level A certificate as well as other IPMA certificates. And by the way, I'm also one of the first assessors in Ipma Delta and performed up to 30 Ipma Delta assessments. Right now, my role in IPMA is to be the chairman and the former president. As you can read, I'm engaged heavily in the German project industry. And if you want to get in touch, you see my email below. Now, what is the situation? I'd like to talk a bit about the German situation, because more than 40% of our gross domestic product is done through projects. And that's a huge number if it comes to euros. So it's more than €1 trillion every year is done through projects. And that means everybody, the project managers and the organization, needs to be professional in the way they handle projects. Okay? And it also means that Germany as a country needs to be competitive, not only through engineering skills, like Spain and other countries are as well, but it's also the organizational side of doing projects. It means we need to be professional in the way we manage projects, as programs, and also portfolios. Okay? And that means we need to invest in professionalism, invest in education and training, and that's what other speakers may have talked about. It means education in the universities, in the high school education, but also training in organizations, in agile or in classical project management and other things. And also organization needs to invest in competence, and I will show you what that means. So, when we talk about organizational competence, that may sound a bit strange for some of you, because you know competence is a term that is maybe only used in the individual context. But as you know, a project is not an island. A project is typically embedded in an organization. So it's very much important to understand that also from a project perspective, the organization need to be mature, they need to be competent to deal with the project inside. And right now I'm dealing with some organizations that do mega projects, and that's more than 11 billion euros. That's electrification from the north to the south. And some of those organizations, they were just used to very small projects, and now they are confronted with a big project, and so they need to learn how to do that. Projects take place in organizations, projects are investments, and at the end, the stakeholders and the shareholders, they want to have value out of the project. And that is what the project and the organization needs to deliver. Okay? And the organization needs competence for doing all this. And I think that's very much important. And also in this mega project now, the owners and the clients are looking for professional subcontractors. So they will also check the professionalism of their subcontractors' project management. And I can tell you out of my experience that many of these subcontractors just fail to demonstrate a professional project management. And it's not so complicated to do that, but they need to invest in raising the level of competence. Now, what is an Ipma Delta assessment? Ipma Delta was developed from 10 years ago in a team in IPMA, where we said that Delta stands for there's a delta between your future ambition and your actual state of project management. So this delta, this gap needs to be filled, and the Ipma delta assessment identifies gaps. And based on these gaps analysis, you can develop your project management further, and this is why we called it Ipma delta. And Ipma delta, by the way, is based on a standard. It's on the IPMA, Organizational Competence Baseline, the OCB. And that's a standard you can download for free from the IPMA website. And it's worth reading. And also there's an Annex A where you will find relevant questions that you should ask yourself as the leader of your company, or that all the people in the company need to ask themselves whether they are ready to cope with these competences. What is Ipma Delta? It's a comprehensive assessment for the whole organization. It may be the entire company that's being assessed or only parts of it. And the focus of the assessment is project, program, and portfolio management. So all the kind of ways projects are handled within competence. Now, in the assessment, we also look at the competence of the individuals. And that means we are based on the ICB. I think you know the Ipma Individual Competence Baseline, because here we have the link to other competence standards that IPMA is also looking for. And also we have the Project Excellence Baseline. I will talk about that later. So it is most important to look at the competences of all the people that are engaged in projects. That's from the top management, building the strategy, doing governance, down to the trenches of the project team members who need to be competent in doing all this. So, and it's important to see that Ipma Delta is doing quite a broad range of competence assessments, looking into the whole setup of an organization that is depicted in this picture, from the strategic management to the top management involvement. Question could be, what is your strategy in the next 5 years? How do you want to develop project management? What are your governance principles? How do you ensure sustainability in what you do? Portfolio level organization questions may be, what kind of criteria do you use for selecting and prioritization of projects? And on the program and the project level, it's just methodology, leadership aspects, and many other things that we ask for. So you see, it's not just looking into single projects, it's looking into the whole organization and how do they approach and engage in projects and programs and portfolios. And that is also embedded in the context of your economy. There may be regulators, there may be other partner organizations or subcontractors, but there may be also requirements from your customer side, and all this will be taken into account to see whether your organization is fit for doing projects in this embedded context. So it's a quite comprehensive assessment. And again, it's kind of a triangulation. What we look at is individuals, and that's the lower left corner, because an organization is composed of many individuals that act on various levels. It's staff members, it's the project manager certainly, you have personnel in the PMO or the portfolio level organization, you have top managers and line department functions, all those people need to be competent in managing projects, and that's based on the ICB. On the other hand, we have the project, and as I said, that's a Project Excellence Baseline. That's what we use for our awards, looking into how do organizations manage individual projects. And as you can see, we do not only look into processes or methodology, it's also how do projects deal with the people. That may be the people on the client side, how do they communicate with the client, how do they engage the client into the project, but also the whole team. And at the end, it's also a matter of how satisfied is the team with the whole project, and do they want to engage in another project in this context. And certainly also we will have a look into the results of projects, because that's what we're all striving for, not only to have a nice organization, a nice setup, but also it needs to matter, so we need to have results. And that's all done through individual assessments of projects, of people. And then we go into an organization and do a lot of interviews with people to check against these organizational criteria. So areas here of competence are governance. So how is the whole governance set up? What kind of principles, regulations, policies, etc. are in place? And that's based on the Ipma OCB standard. Then we look into the practices of project management, program management, portfolio management. How mature is the organization doing all this in their context? Then we will have a look into alignment aspects, and that's how do the internal structures of projects align with the functional department, or do they align with external organizational parts like client organizations in projects or subcontractor organizations in projects? And typically there's also a part where we look into processes and cultures, because also in our mega projects here in Germany there are a lot of cultural differences. And I'm not only talking about international cultural differences, but it's also very different organizational cultural difference or corporate culture differences. And that's very interesting. If they do not fit together, organizations will not be able to do projects in the right manner. We will look into the resources, and what is very important again, that's the people competences. And that's not what we look into the ICB in the lower left corner, but it's more about how does the organization and the human resource department deal with people. So is it attractive for people to do projects in their organization? Is their career path? Are there training opportunities? Is the reward system built on projects? Or it's just the normal setup for non-project business? So that's very important also, because if a company is not attractive to the people, they would not engage with the company or will not do the projects. And that's, for example, another very important aspect in our mega projects right now here in Germany, that we lack people. So organizations need to be attractive for people to engage. Now, the lower two parts are self-assessments. So we select projects, we select individuals and ask them to fill a self-assessment questionnaire. But for the upper one, the O module, means a team of assessors will go on site to the organization, have an interview plan, check documents, so we will do an on-site assessment. That's very important because in many organizations, they have nice PowerPoint documentation, they have nice brochures, and nice strategies, but if you talk to the people and triangulate between the three modules, we often identify that yeah, it's nicely made up, but in real projects nothing is really working. And that's also a delta, a gap that an organization needs to overcome to fill that and balance all these sides. Now, it's kind of a maturity assessment. We call it competence classes. So an organization typically starts with this process in an initial state. That's number one here. So you have individuals that are very competent, that can manage projects, but it's nothing stable, nothing sustainable, nothing on the organizational level. And in order to reach that more, embedded more in the organizational level, we have competence class defined and standardized. Means the organization will develop standards, the organizations implement that standards and applies it to at least a part or most of the projects they do, and that is what we will check. And depending on the real practice, they will gain a competence class 2 or 3 certificate in the end. It's more difficult to reach to class 4 because that means it's a full continuous development cycle. Top management is gauged and managing that. There are KPIs like in a balanced scorecard where also the management, the top management, have a look into the further development of project management as a system. And the fifth, we never found an organization yet on the level 5, means optimization. So the organization is continuously optimizing. That could also mean that they are reducing the amount of standards or the amount of details in project management standard, because they are just doing in a certain phase smaller projects with less requirements. So it means it's a breathing system. That's very difficult to reach. But that's for some organization at least what they want to reach. Okay, so the majority of assessment results we have seen is, let's say, between 2 and 3. That's the typical area where companies start to develop and move on. And we have many reports. I don't bother you now with all these reports, but here you can see a typical spread, because in some areas organization may be very competent. They may be even excellent in that area. Here, for example, in the human resource part of it. But in some areas, they, like here in governance, they may lag behind. And so seeing that you already have a program of developing the competence further, and you can derive a development program with certain action items. And for example, here, you should do something about the governance to level up. You should do something about the processes and resources in projects, and maybe on the individual side more on the perspective competences according to ICP 4. So you see, it's a very individual result that any organization will get, and from there they can see what they can do with it. And that already leads me to the benefits of doing such an IPMA Delta assessment. Actually, you know the status quo, and that may be very relevant to know what you need to do, but also to know what your best practices are already. And surprisingly, some organizations really did not know that they have some real best practices that they can share with others, that they can use internally, that they actually can build on. But certainly it also shows areas for improvement and development, and you can derive a plan for that. And I think that's what most of the organization actually want to do. It is also a matter of showing visibility and how important projects are for the organization. So any management that is investing in such an Ipma Delta assessment also shows that they're willing to invest, and that project management is important for them. It's a matter of doing comparisons. So also in Germany, we do a lot of benchmarking so that we compare one organization with the other organization, or you could do that even within an organization, that we compare certain business units and their status in project management so that they can learn from each other. At the end, it's also, if you invest in project management, that you have at the end better results. So we have cases, very big companies like Siemens, they invested heavily in project management, and they have statistically significant better results in that. But also it helps you in the market position so that you're more competitive. And this is why my title is about that, that you improve your competitive market position. And that's especially now in these times where the global competition is difficult, and also coming out of Corona will be a difficult one. I think you can use those time to invest improving your project management. And by engagement of the Ipma Delta assessors, which are very experienced assessors, you can also improve your project management by learning from them. And at the end, it's also, you are sure, you're more self-confident where you are and what you can do. If you're a supplier, you can show the certificate to your client. And we have more and more cases where clients here in Germany ask for such certificates. At a minimum, certificates of project managers. And some organizations are still failing to prove that kind of competence. Okay, so invest in that. It will turn out to be very beneficial and also being and acting on the market. I do not want to bother you much with the certification process. I want just to highlight that the whole certification is run through the national certification body of IPMA. So in Spain, the IPRO is running a certification body, and they will be your partner in designing that whole assessment, guiding you through these phases that I show here, and they will also send their assessors to do all this. So in Spain, we already did several assessments, so you can be sure that also in Spain and also in the Spanish-speaking countries, we can deliver a full-blown Ipma Delta certification process. Just call up your certification body or IPRO and they will guide you to this. A few examples, and it's just a few examples, because at the end, the organization will get a certificate from this certification body. It's an international certificate, so you see always IPMA logos all over. And here are some examples of ceremonies. On the upper left, this is a picture of Thales. In this case, it was Thales in Portugal who received a certificate, I think 2 or 3 years ago. Then we have on the upper right with Jesus in Panama City. So this is a case for a public municipality. So it was the city of Panama, and it was also very successful and beneficial, and a good example in Latin America. Here on the lower left, it was an example in Iran. It was a charity. They are running a hospital for cancer-stricken kids. And it was also very nice because they do a lot of projects. But if you see the smiling faces of the kids helping them, that's also very nice through this Ipma Delta. And on the lower right, you see Atomstroy Expo. That's a huge, very large atomic organization where we did twice an Ipma Delta, which is improving competence over the years. And these are just examples, but they show we cover all areas. So private, public administration, and even not-for-profit organizations. Small companies up to very large and very complex organizations. So that's all covered by IPMA Delta. I think that's it from my side. Here you see the contact of IPMA, but you know where to go in Spain, so that's IPRO. And here you see the world map, because in all these countries we can offer this service of Ipma Delta. So thanks for your interest, and maybe later we can also go for a question and answer session, and I can then answer your questions. No. That's it from my side. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Reinhard. Sorry, I'm moving too fast today. Thank you very much. Yes, we'll do that. We will go for whole presentation, and we will have questions for both of them at the end. Hope, the floor is yours. Just tap on the yellow button.
Yes, okay. I hope everyone can hear me now.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, and of course thank you very much for inviting me to share some thoughts about projects and the way we are doing projects at the moment, and all the different methods, methodologies, frameworks we all have at the moment, and what it exactly does this mean for us as project management professional. So I called my presentation Man on the Moon, and I will explain you a little bit. As you can see, my name is Joop Schefferlie. I'm Vice President Certification at the moment within IPMA. Also head of the certification body in the Netherlands, and I've did some activities in the Dutch board next to my day-to-day work, of course. one of the most, no, maybe one of the better, especially when we look at it now, presidents of the United States did one of the, I think, most important statements ever. And what he did, in fact, was launching an enormous project. This enormous project was, of course, flying to the moon. He did it in the last on a century, I think it was in the 60s or something. And they achieved to do this. And this means something, I guess, because this means for me that if you look at a project and you look at the world and you look at the things we are doing and the things we are trying to achieve within our environment or whatever, and when you need to realize change or goals, for example, new buildings, something in the healthcare industry, most of the time it is project management related. So there is no progress and improvement in all our world without doing this by project, I think. As you know, and also as Reinhard already mentioned in his presentation just a while ago, almost 40% of everything we are doing anyway in Europe is related to projects or project management. And I think that's a lot. That's also promising because there are many things going on at the moment, as you all know, but the number of projects and the time and money we spend on projects is still growing, and I think that in general is good news for all of us, especially when we're, of course, working in our field of projects and project management. Apparently, or obviously, not every project is a success. We all know that. If you read the newspapers every day, there's always some article about a failure of a project. And for different reasons, of course. And that's important to know what those reasons are, and we have to think of how we can improve the success rate of projects. There was a research over the last years, I think it was done by Gartner, and that finds out that the success rate of small projects are higher than of big and or mega projects. That's also something I think we need to think about and find out what the reason is behind this statement and this experience. Yes, and I also think that the environment we're working in is changing at the moment. In the past, we had only one approach, and that was, let's say, waterfall. We did all the activities within the project based on a framework or a method, and we did everything step by step. And in this picture, you see, I call this traditional project management. And in the past, that was fine because there were no social media, there were not that many stakeholders. There was no newspaper or news following every step you were doing as a project manager in your project. But of course the world is changing, it's getting more complex, there are many more stakeholders involved. Some projects are mega-sized, big changes we're doing. For example, if you do a project flying to the moon or establishing a new oil plant in the desert somewhere in Asia, those are really, really big, complex and mega projects, I think. So I think the complexity of projects is increasing. Many more stakeholders, many more politics. There's a lot of social media involved. So the job you have to do as a project manager or with your project team is getting more and more complex. And recently, as you all know, there was something new, which was called Agile, the Agile approach, the Agile way of working. And I think that also changed a lot because based on the digital disruption we are facing at the moment, especially in IT, especially in the financial industry or telecom industry, the Agile approach, not suddenly, but anyway, it appeared recently. And it changed especially also in my country, in the Netherlands, the way we look at how to change something or how to do a project. In my country, for example, especially in the financial and IT sector, suddenly the wording of a project was totally forbidden. The role of the project manager just disappeared. Well, that of course, that's something, because everything was changed to Agile, and everyone was thinking that Agile was the golden bullet or something. And of course, maybe you know, I'm quite a big fan of that Agile approach, but it's not the golden bullet, or it's not that fantastic, and I think you cannot use an Agile approach in every situation. The funny thing is that as you might know, and I will explain later, that also IPME launched some products addressing the people who are working in an Agile environment. And the funny thing is that I think that of course, the name of people involved in an Agile project might be a bit different. Maybe the name of doing a project is changed to creating a change, but at the end we are still doing the same things and try to realize added value for the company we're working for by doing projects in whatever kind of name we are using. And I found an interesting picture because especially in the IT world, everyone is always trying to create so many different and maybe also difficult frameworks and approaches as possible. If you look at Agile now I think it's popular for the last 3, 4, 5 years, already more, and this just a summary, than 50 Agile approaches, frameworks and methods appeared. So on engineering level, on team level, on portfolio level, or on product or program level, you can choose many approaches and frameworks. And if I read this, that's why it's interesting to share this with you. Well, I wish you good luck. Why? Because I'm convinced that all those methods, approaches, frameworks will not help you. I think that as from the moment that a framework or approach of a sub-product, as you see here on the screen, is getting more important than the things we wanted to try to achieve in our projects, we are totally lost. So if you want to implement or use or create all those projects within your organization or in your project, I wish you good luck, because I'm quite sure that you will not be successful. Can you also imagine how much time it will cost to implement all those products in your organization to just create a change? So I think Agile should be flexible. Agile should be more creative. Of course, must support the business change the company wants to achieve. But I've never seen so many frameworks and structure and methods as in the Agile world. It's even worse than Prince 2. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we are also a little bit overreacting if we look at all the things we try to use getting our projects done. So, wrong button. On the other hand, it's absolutely successful, the Agile approach, especially in IT, in smaller projects, in projects where you want to develop software, where the specifications are not totally clear at the moment when you start doing your project. Then you absolutely should use an Agile approach. That's helpful, that's good, and it's also successful. You should also question what am I doing? What kind of project am I doing? Do I really need, and what kind of approach do I need? And that's an interesting one. And there is also a hybrid approach, and I'm maybe more in favor of that one because this is presented by Gardner recently, by the way. It's called the bi-model approach, and that looks quite promising because I think that fits or combines the best of both worlds, and that might be a good idea. If you look, what does a project need? I think it needs a vision. You know, of course, you have to know what you are doing, what you're aiming for, what the business value of every project is. And of course, it needs an approach. It needs good project management, as we all know. It needs maybe a method, courage. It's quite important, creativity, commitment, and of course, common sense. And the last bullet is, I think, is maybe one of the most important ones, because when you have to think when you start a project in what kind of sector do I work, what kind of project is it, what kind of people do I need to create a successful project. Do I need a waterfall approach? Am I building a bridge, or am I creating a software application? It's a different approach. It needs different people. It needs a different approach, method, maybe framework, and it can be agile, it can be waterfall, it can also be a combination. So it also needs a lot of common sense and thinking. What am I doing, and what am I going to achieve? But the most important thing, from my point of view, is that we need competent people. You can have the most fantastic approach, you can have the most fantastic method or framework. I think without competent people, everything we are doing will fail. And I think that's an important statement. And that doesn't mean only the project manager, that counts for all your team and also your sponsors and the business specialists. You need competent people when you start doing something like a project. And if you look at now our, let's say, environment in project management, I think we also see a change in roles of people involved in projects. We have a project manager, we have a project leader, there is a test manager, there's an implementation manager, there is maybe a PMO officer, there is a sponsor, there is a risk manager, someone else responsible for the planning. And nowadays we also, of course, have project manager trainers involved, we have consultants, we have, you name it. I can easily find 50 or maybe 100 names of different roles of people who can be involved within a project and our project management profession. So that is the challenge, I think. So the challenge is that we have to be sure if the people are competent for achieving a successful project. So that means two things. First of all, you have to know what kind of competences are needed to create a successful project. So the next project which is on the list, that maybe requires different competences than the second project on the list. So you need to have a picture of your project in terms of competences. But that also means you have to have a picture of the people available for running or managing your next project. So for me, it's really important that people, the project managers, all of us are able to create a sort of a picture and an individual development plan addressing the role he or she can do within the next project. And I think this is also why where IPMA comes in place. I think when we look at the individual competence baseline of IPMA, and you try to certify on what kind of level, that doesn't matter. You create a fantastic picture for yourself, for your future, but also for maybe the company you're working in, about yourself, about your competences, and also about the relationship for your next job or your next challenge within that company, and how together with the next challenges you can facilitate your growth. as a project manager, as an individual, which kind of competences do you need to develop to be more successful. That's important, I think. But there's also a change. So and there also again IPME can play an important role for all the individuals working in the environment of projects. I think the leadership is changing, and that's also why we created the product portfolio for Agile leadership. It's not about Agile, it's not about the method, it's about the change in how we look at projects at the moment. Because if you look at old-fashioned leadership, it was, as you know, directive, the project manager or the manager of a company was the boss. He thought he knew everything better than the other people in his team, and I think that style of leadership is changing, or maybe even past. Because when you look at modern leadership, you have to be able to create a team around you with maybe people who knows more about something than you do as a leader. The leader needs to facilitate. He needs to create a team with people who are specialists in their profession. And that changes the behavior, of course, also of and also the mindset of people working in projects. So I think the balance of competences we have and we need to be successful in a leadership role, that can also be a project manager, of course, is changing. It is changing from more traditional directive leadership to more, let's say, adaptive leadership. So it's a mind shift, and I think that is aligned or goes together with the time change we are in, and also because of the fact we are entering, as stated in this slide, to a more digital age. A little bit about one of our new products. We created within IPME a reference guide for Agile leadership. It's based, of course, again on our standards, the individual competence baseline. And the maybe funny thing is that also in an Agile leadership role, when you as an Agile leader are managing changes within your company, you still need all those competences and the maturity and those competences like they are stated in the ICB4. And that's good, because we still have to negotiate, we still have to manage our team, we still have to purchase something, we still have to define a strategy, risk management, everything, whatever kind of approach you are using is still in place. The big change, of course, is the mindset. The mindset of people working in an Agile environment is different than we are still doing in a traditional way of project management. So I think this can be, for all of us, a fantastic addition to the models we are already using. In what kind of approach you're using. It can be a waterfall, it can be hybrid, and it can be Agile. So, to conclude, I think my main message for you for today is that we have many approaches, we have many methods, we have many frameworks available, and that's all fine. Doing projects, managing projects is really important to the world and the environment we're living in, because 40% of everything we are doing is project management related. My main conclusion is that you make the difference. People make the difference. Competent people make the difference. If you're not competent, you can not be successful in the next change or project you have to manage. So IPME can help you to get a picture of your competences, and by having this picture, you can, of course, work on your competences to be a better project manager or to a better employee in the world of project management. That's my last slide, so thank you for now.